Hi, everyone. It has been a minute, and we are doing another sketch wagon, and that's why we're talking about sketching when life happens, because it has been one crazy year, but we're glad you're here with us. I'm
When
Christina
was our
Wall
last one? I
in
forgot to look.
January. It was
Oh
in
gosh,
January,
so
so it's been
yeah,
4 months, I guess, right?
yeah, yeah,
You know,
almost
but
5.
it
Yeah.
has been a crazy year between everything, and we're going to
hmm
talk a little bit about that. How do you keep creative when you doom scroll occasionally, when you have health problems, when your family has health problems? I think we're at that age where, we can have health problems, or we have elderly relatives that have health
hmm
problems that we have to take care of. And how do you incorporate creativity into that? And also, I think even more importantly, how do you take a break without feeling like you're being a traitor to your desires to be creative? You shouldn't feel guilty if you have to take a break or maybe try some other creative practice. To keep the important thing is to keep yourself feeling happy and healthy mentally, and that can be a challenge. What is it they say, that life happens while you're making plans?
Yeah.
And I think that that's very true. I mean, if anything, for the past 5 years, that's been true.
Yeah.
But first we'll start with news. Amy, do you have any news to share?
Well, in the work world, I'm getting ready to head to Taos in a couple weeks. We're gonna drive out, and we're taking our time this year. And I've got a nice full crop of people. I've got like 12 people in the class, which has been really nice. And we've already like met online, and people are working out their plans together and stuff. So it's great. I'm excited to kind of get back into the teaching realm, because I was in Guatemala in February and early March, and then kind of came home to just a maelstrom of like I called it the cascade of the unexpected, because we had some health problems, both of us here at home, but we're on the tail end of all that, and now I need to get back in and like write some blogs, and I've been feeling like a lot of artistic guilt around like the fact that I hadn't made any art since Guatemala. Like I didn't do anything since Guatemala, but the pictures of the musicians I sent to you for the little
The
frame
mail,
for
yeah.
today, that was first time I had picked up anything to draw since I was in Guatemala, and that was because I was just at a concert for Irish music. I just managed to get away for the weekend, which I wasn't even sure I'd be able to go until like a few days beforehand. And so I was just really happy to sort of just go back to like life outside of, you know, difficulty and worries and all that stuff. And so that felt really good to pick up my pencil, and I didn't do it with any agenda. I literally was like digging around in my purse for like a, a, a book and a pencil. So
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah, and I happened, thankfully, to have them with me, because I was like, I feel like drawing right now, and it was the first time I had felt like drawing in months. And
Hmm.
and like you said, it's like we we beat up on ourselves when we're not making
Hmm.
things, like being quote unquote productive.
Hmm.
And I always balk against the notion of being productive, but it's like hardwired in us through all this capitalism business. and
It
and
is.
we have to remind ourselves, like even artists like Georgia O'Keeffe would go a couple years at a time. Like anytime her rat bastard husband would cheat on her, she'd go into a depressive death spiral, and she wound up in the hospital. And she would take a couple years off, a couple years, to kind of pull herself together. And then she'd come back to it. She always came back to it, and sometimes in very new and different and exciting ways. And so um, it's, if we have some kind of desire to make something, whether it be
Hmm.
knitting or sketching or whatever it is we want to do, if we have that inherent kind of like, oh, I'd like to try to learn to draw, then you've got something. Like I think every
Hmm.
human has it on some level, but
I
if
do
you have
too.
if you have that though, like more than the people who sort of squelch it down, then it'll always be there. And
Hmm.
you can fall off the sketch wagon for, a few months, and then you just climb back on and get your practice back up, and it doesn't matter. Like, nothing's missing, we haven't failed. Like, it just
No.
is life happens.
And you can
So,
find creativity in a lot of different things. Like you
mhm.
said, you were talking about other crafts like knitting
Yeah.
or, sewing or even cooking.
Cooking. Mhm.
Anything like that, that kind of, I think there's something really visceral about a lot of those things. I learned a new word. It's called friction maxing, which is supposedly when you do
Friction.
things. It's a young person term, and we're old, so we will not use it again. I apologize to any young people to watch this. Friction
Maxing.
maxing is like where instead of ordering, say, dinner from Uber Eats, you uh, make make your own dinner or like from scratch or whatever, which everybody obviously used to do. I mean, it's a time consuming thing, but there's also like one thing I started learning, taking time to learn a couple of years ago, was making my own pizza dough.
Mhm.
Because pizza has gotten really expensive, but it was more than that. It was like, this is something that people make, themselves all over the world, yet we spend all this money to do it. And there's something really visceral about it that's nice. And people that make bread probably notice the same thing, because you kind of are kneading something and it's a very simple recipe. And there's something about that is very similar to sketching in a way, because you're kind of you're not focusing on the outside world, you're focusing on
Well,
this.
and you're using your hands.
Yes, I think
Like
that's the
I think,
similarity.
as we ironically sit here on a digital platform conversing, it has been the onslaught of the digital stuff that has everybody kind of a little bit crazy.
I
And,
agree.
and of course, like the whole COVID era kind of made that worse, for so many people. It shut a lot of people out of things. But it also brought a lot of sourdough into the world, and,
It
and I
did.
do yeah, and I do think that concept of, like, I haven't heard the term friction maxing, but I have
The
heard a
maxing
lot of
thing's all young people.
yeah, but I have heard a lot of, chitter chatter about friction in general, that we actually need a bit of friction. Like, life is not meant to be easy. We're not meant to be the people in that movie Wall-E in our little
Hmm.
chairs that float around and we have our big drinks, like, we're not meant for
Well, I do
that.
have
Like,
my
we're
big drink.
yeah, exactly. Of course, I have my big icy drink, but we're meant to do some working out and some hard stuff in order to make the the pleasurable stuff feel pleasurable, because it's all about, like, if everything is easy and good, then what does it do to rest? That's not going to feel great if you haven't done something. Like, does that make sense? Like, if
It
you're
does. It does.
yeah, like, if you go and you work out or something in the morning, then the rest of your day is going to feel like, oh, I'm going to sit down, or I'm going to do something, quiet. But if all you do is lay around and scroll, nothing is going to feel good. There's not going to be that difference. And I think that friction allows a lot, but the problem is we've been getting different kinds of friction in like how the world is right now. Like,
Yes.
we know we're feeling wrong, and that's a friction of a sort, but we haven't quite, I think we're coming around to it, but we haven't quite come to the point where, like, oh, maybe it's these phones that are
Hmm.
causing this internal friction. And what we need to do is get back to, like, a more like meat suit friction, like
Yeah, you're right.
working out or getting in the garden or trying to make bread or chopping up a salad or sketching with other people, in a scenario. Um, I think that I know young people especially are starting to talk about how to just take their lives back, from the digital
Hmm.
world. And nothing against, like, the digital tools are great, but they're
Hmm.
tools, and we need to use them as such instead of as constant companions. So,
Yeah, I think that there is something to that, and that's why, you should keep up some sort of practice, not necessarily even just sketching, but like you can always have a little notebook and write down thoughts in, maybe
mhm,
look up quotes that help you, play music, or maybe it's something that beyond knitting, maybe it's making Zentangles,
Yeah.
um, or maybe it's something like organizing your spice rack. I mean, there's
Yeah.
something
Or
creative to
paint
that
paint
too.
by number.
Oh, that's not a
Like,
bad idea too. Yeah.
like if I mean, I think, just having a paintbrush in your hand and
Hmm.
searching for the little numbers, like there's something to that, or doing a puzzle.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends that do puzzles. There's like these
Yeah.
new murder mystery puzzles, or
Ooh,
puzzles
I
with
haven't heard about those.
yeah, there's like ones that tell a story, and then there's ones
Mhm.
that have like thought puzzles that you have to solve to build the other ones. Like there's some
Oh,
complicated
wow.
ones now. So there are ways to, and I think the thing that's nice about, like, with the puzzle pieces, or with, embroidery, or if you're doing beading or something like that, like you're using your hands, or making
Yeah.
bread, or any of these acts, or planting a flower or whatever, because you're touching
Yeah.
stuff and it's making you, I think there's something with that hand brain connection
Yeah.
that
And to do it for
helps you.
no, like, performative reason. Like,
Exactly. I think
to
that's one of the
just
biggest problems with a lot of like social media that makes people have anxiety, is
yeah.
that they feel like they have to perform all the time, and really you just want to be drawing and doing art, and it makes
Mhm.
people, I think, feel a lot of anxiety. And there's so many people, like even with our sketching group, which I highly recommend people to sketch with us. There's people that are afraid because they think that people are too talented that are there, and really it doesn't matter what other
It
people draw.
doesn't.
All it is your
Everybody
personal
starts
practice.
where
Yeah.
they start. Everybody begins where they begin, and some people do it as a profession. Some people have got a few tricks up their sleeve and teach other people, but
Hmm.
all of us bring our own abilities to the table. So,
And you develop your practice how it helps you. I mean, maybe you
mhm,
do a little drawing, maybe you do a lot, maybe you do some writing with it. And writing certainly is a good practice too. I mean,
mhm.
I've been trying to put more writing into my practice because it's not as innate with me as it is with some other
You
people.
know, on that note, I was up at the Dayton Art Institute to see the Tony
Mm-hmm.
Foster exhibit. Did you get to see that?
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
It's beautiful. I think it's on till the 17th, so there's still like a few more days.
We can always put
But
a link in the show notes.
yeah, it's so Tony Foster, he's in his 80s and he does
Mm-hmm.
watercolors on site, but his there many of them are large scale, like feet wide and tall. And he would like anchor his drawing on like a fold out kind of board and then clip it on and
Mm-hmm.
then like batten down the board with um like strings and it's quite a setup. But he carries just a tiny little, like this big, a little set of watercolors and a few brushes, and that's all he would use, and a pencil. And he, would sit in observation for hours making these drawings, and they're absolutely beautiful. But as he was drawing, he would take notes, and they're in the drawing.
Oh,
And
no,
then he
that
would
is
also,
cool.
yeah, and they become kind of part of the drawing. And then he also did like little color tests, which I always do in my drawings. So I thought that was really fascinating. But like if he's mixed a color and he wants to test it before he puts it into the drawing, so he's got these like little rainbows of little tick marks of colors that he's tried, and it's all part of the drawing. Yeah, it was a stunning show, and he also would collect little things from wherever it was he was doing the drawing, so little stones or shells or leaves or petals or whatever, and then those were shown in framed in with the drawings. So they're
Oh,
very
that's
like
nice.
they're very of the world, and they're his whole thing is about temporality, like
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
different ways of looking at time, like from a geological perspective or from like a human lifetime perspective or from like fleeting moments
Mm-hmm.
perspective. So it was really really good. I highly recommend. And I will say, like, going to see some art actually made me think, okay, maybe I'm like ready to start picking up my paintbrushes again, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
sort of slowly getting out of caregiver mode and we're all kind of getting back to normal. And now I have a little bit more bandwidth, and it was nice to go and see some art that I found inspiring. So, like, get to a museum or go to a Skechers outing and, like, just tell yourself, "Just bring a pencil. Don't do
Mhm.
anything else." Just being around other artists can
Yeah, I
be
mean,
can be really inspiring.
and maybe, draw what you wanna draw, like, maybe you don't
Mhm.
I mean, don't feel that you have to do what everybody else is doing, if you wanna draw, um, something else that's not in front of you. I mean, just anything to kind of get the pencil moving, just to get that brain hand thing happening,
Mhm.
I think is really important because I think that you're right. People sitting in front of screens all the time and is sort of making them go a little bit crazy, I think. And I think there's
Yeah.
something to like getting outside, walking around. I mean, that's one of the big benefits I think of besides it, being just something just for you, but also you're outside and listening and feeling the air blowing on you wherever
Mhm.
you are. And I think that there's something to be said for that because I think a lot of people, I think start to feel trapped. I think there's something about like looking up things online and you get caught in, you know, like I feel like um, there's a bit of the internet that's kind of like flypaper and you keep getting stuck in it and you're just trying to get it off and you're like, well, I need to be doing this, but
Mhm.
I've got this flypaper stuck to me, so I can't,
Yeah.
and I
I'm
think,
reminded of that scene in, Christmas Vacation when they've gotten the Christmas tree and they go to bed and they still have the pine pitch all stuck to their fingers. So, like, Chevy Chase is trying to turn out lights or pick up a magazine and everything's, like, getting stuck on his fingers.
I think that it's kind of like that because I think it's a constant distraction and it really I mean they've had some recent studies that have come out and said that kids are really being affected by this.
Mhm.
It's making them have trouble doing anything that takes a long time.
Yeah.
And I think it affects everyone, but especially when your brain's developing, I think that that can be really difficult because then you can't
Yeah.
thoroughly take something in.
Well,
And
I listened to a little interview on NPR, the
mhm,
other day that was about reading and how,
mhm,
um, reading, like, actual books has kind of, taken a hit in recent years, and they were talking about how to redevelop a practice of reading, and I'm not a very strong reader, I'm a very slow, like, rather dyslexic kind of reader, but I do enjoy it once I get tucked in, and the trick is, like, finding something that will, like, pull me into the to the point where I don't wanna do anything else, which is a lovely
mhm.
place to be with a book, but they suggested, like, try getting a book and just reading for 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the evening, and don't think like, "Oh, I have to finish the book," or I have to read the entirety of War and Peace or whatever. Like, if War and Peace is what you wanna
Don't
do,
don't
then
start with
then
War and
tuck
Peace.
yeah, then tuck into maybe the first chapter and just
Yeah.
commit to spending time with it. I mean, I will say my husband, Tony, he actually read War and Peace. He made himself do it, and he was like, halfway through, he's like, "This is actually really good." It's like a huge rom-com with all these, like, interwoven relationships and whatever. He said it was great. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I'm bad about mostly listening to audiobooks because I'm usually
Yeah.
painting while I'm listening to them. But
Mhm.
obviously, when you're listening to it, I think the reading comprehension is definitely different. Because I had a friend that was in a not a writers group, a readers group, or book club, and she said that the takeaways from the book were very different between the people that listened to it and the people that read it, which was interesting.
That is interesting. What were the differences?
Well, just how they interpret it, because when you're listening to an audiobook, it's being interpreted by an
Mhm.
actor. So the person's
Yeah.
reading it. And so you may get an emotional hit from a scene different when someone's reading it than if you're just reading it with your if you're
When
silently reading
you're
the book.
when you personally do read a book, do you hear it in your head like it's being read as an audiobook?
Yeah, I mean, I think you see pictures, you kind of imagine how
But,
people
like
would talk.
no, but, like, just is there a voice reading it in your head?
Um, yeah, I think
Because 'Cause
so.
I've heard of people
I
who,
think
like,
so.
read and it's not like I'm reading and someone is reading the word. Like I'm hearing like a voice, either my own or my
Mhm.
imagined voice of the character or the narrator doing the reading. Like, but I've heard of people who when they read, that's not what happens. They just read. And that
I
doesn't make any sense to me.
I don't know. Like, I mean, I definitely, when I read a book or even listening to an audiobook, I definitely get pictures in my head of what
Oh
stuff
yeah,
looks
absolutely,
like.
especially with an
And
audiobook.
I,
Yeah.
yeah, and so, I mean, I think even more, I think like there have been books, like, there have been books that I've listened to audiobook that I didn't like that well. And then when I read it, I felt, um, I liked it better, and it was because I
Yeah.
didn't like the way the person had read some of the characters, and it made me not like the book. And I think that that is always a danger with an audiobook. But on the other hand,
Absolutely.
I suppose reading it also, I don't know, there's a vibe that you get reading a book that's definitely different than when you hear someone reading it.
Yeah.
Because I think,
Although sometimes a well narrated book that can make
yes.
all the difference. Like
Hmm.
the guy who did all the Terry Pratchett books, Stephen Briggs.
Oh, yes, he's very
He's
good.
so talented. And to me, like I always enjoyed reading those books, but hearing them through his interpretation that was always a favorite thing of mine.
And
Um,
Will Wheaton reads a lot of the, John Scalzi books, and those are really good. And they're great for
mhm.
car rides. I mean, we listen to a lot of
Yeah.
audiobooks when we're driving. I have a couple road trips planned in
Where are you
June.
going?
Oh, I guess I didn't even go into my news.
Yeah, you went, sorry, we went off on tangents.
No, it's no worries. I'm teaching a gouache workshop in at Asheville's Carolina Sketch Crawl. That is sold
Oh,
out, but
wow.
we are going to. There's a group of us from Cincinnati that are driving down there, and we're going to go a slow drive. We're going to stop like in Berea and some other places, and so rather than trying to get there as quickly as possible, we're going to stop a couple places and try to
We're
have
doing the
fun.
same thing on our way out to Taos. We're
Yeah,
taking like
exactly.
instead of 2 days, we're taking 5, and
Nice, nice,
we're just
and
gonna like stop
exploring.
and yeah, and explore a few places. We've got some visiting to do. So yeah, that's great. Are you gonna see Lonnie down there?
Yes, we're going to stay with her actually. She
Yeah.
was,
Oh,
for those
good.
listening, she was one of our admins in Cincinnati, and we have lost her to
Hmm.
Asheville. So she
Yeah.
built her dream retirement home down in Asheville. So I'm looking forward to see it. So actually, one of my dreams is one of my future travelogues. I'd like to do a road trip, like, because I've never done a road trip across the United States, and I think it'd be really
Oh,
fun
yeah.
to do something like that and do a travelogue based on it. But
Hmm.
I haven't even begun to think about the logistics and how to do something like that because I think it would be really interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
find it difficult. This is another thing back to sketching.
uh-huh.
It's like when I'm like traveling, like on the
Mhm.
move, I don't do as much in the sketching because to me it's almost like it's so overwhelming the traveling part that I don't do my best work until I'm settled and nested.
Mhm.
So I'm not
Well, I
sure,
try
like I
to
can do some of that, but I really marvel at how, how you can do stuff on the go the way you do. It's pretty amazing.
well, the sketching's easy, the writing's not, and I'm trying to do much more writing because
Yeah. See, I'm
um
so much better at writing.
and I think they're both really good practices, and I think that they both I'm trying to integrate them much more robustly, and so we'll
Mhm.
see how. I mean, the problem is that I love drawing so much. I prefer doing that to writing.
Right.
That is the language that I like to communicate in. But and so my writing tends to be more like bullet points, which is good so that I
Mm.
don't forget because it's so. I mean, one of the things that's so difficult when traveling is you forget almost everything.
Mhm.
And so,
Yeah,
and you
that's
might
why
think I'll
I
remember
always
this
have
forever,
people
and it's
do I always have people do what I call a to-do list
yes.
for each day, like just even down the side note of your
That actually is
schedule.
a really good idea. Like, even
Yeah,
if you
like
don't sketch, to list
in our
things each
regular
day.
lives, we do the to-do list, but if we
Mhm.
sort of flipped that script and did the to-do list instead, and like this is kind of what I accomplished and what happened and what I took note of. And then you
Mhm.
can either, maybe you do a sketch or maybe you don't, but it's nice to have like an annotated life.
Because, yeah,
Like
it's
my
hard to remember. things.
Yeah, and my grandmother, I have a lot of her old diaries, and
Oh,
they're
wow.
not
That's
like
nice.
how do I feel type diaries. They're like this much space for Tuesday and this much space for Wednesday. But she would put in there like went to mass, called the doctor, went to grocery, like her
But
little
it
bullet
gives you
points.
a window into her life because,
Absolutely.
you're kind of like, what have I done all day? But if you
Yeah, and
break down each
she'll
day,
mention it was so and so's birthday,
hmm
or whatever. And they're not. It's a nice little. It's like a little trail left behind because if she hadn't written those things down, her life would be a mystery,
well, and
and it's
that's one
gone.
thing,
So
like when you're ill, for example, or when you're getting over something like surgery, or, we were talking about, my nephew has been ill for the past couple of years, and sometimes it's hard to see the progress you're making. But if you keep some
absolutely.
sort of diary, and if not even like you said, like make it a flowery, but like if you just list each day things that you've
Hmm.
done, and in the
Hmm.
case of where you're trying to make progress, say, I stood up for the first time today, or I took a
Right.
step today. I mean, stuff like that really, like, you can look back through it and feel good about your progress.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
Absolutely. And there's ways to, there's digital ways to keep track of that stuff too, which,
mhm.
is if you're a digital person and like to do that kind of thing. But yeah, just taking note instead of like the world has a way of washing over us, especially when times are hard and it's hard to keep up. But like when you do get a chance to take a breath and and sort of sit back and go, whoa, what just happened? You can kind of make a note, and I do think it's important to do that and to take like there's something about drawing and writing and gardening and cooking and all the creative things that allow us to be more reflective. Like I think that something that people are missing even outside of the just the creative arts is the concept of reflection, like self-reflection
Exactly. Uh-huh.
and reflection on life and reflection on the world. And people don't really contemplate like the bigger stuff anymore as much as maybe we need to be doing. and
Mhm.
and the like we come from an angle of just sketching, but it's steeped in just human creativity really. and
Mhm.
and just to allow it's all down to slowing down,
Mhm.
like you
Allowing
said on your like you said
silences.
on your yeah, and you like you said on your road trip, that you're not gonna speed down there in the 6 hours. You're gonna allow yourself a little time to
Mhm.
take it all in. And I just think that practice is so important.
And frankly,
So
I think a lot of people don't get that opportunity. I think that there is, like, you have this constant drumbeat from your phone, from other
mhm.
screens,
Well, and
stuff
also
demanding your
to be
attention.
fair, some people are working 3 jobs just
Oh
to make
yeah,
ends meet.
exactly,
So,
exactly. I
it's a
mean,
it's a
it's
great it's a great place of privilege to even
agreed.
have time and energy to contemplate things. So I recognize that. Um,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
yeah, like you said, the phones aren't helping.
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, it is a great place of privilege to think, do I even have time to sketch? I mean,
Hmm.
I always recommend just carrying a little notebook with you, and maybe you jot down stuff. Like, you don't need to
Hmm.
have, even expensive materials, but just something that you can keep for you. I
Yeah.
think one of the biggest things is it's so easy to lose yourself in all of this stuff, and that's where the silences are nice, and maybe taking a walk, or just like just listening to the birds in the morning,
Hmm.
as it can even be sort of an act of rebellion, like instead of
Yeah,
running, spending five
absolutely.
minutes in the
I
morning and
heard
listening
a
to the morning doves.
Yeah, and the morning chorus is something right now. It's really great.
Yeah,
I heard something the other day that um, if if you do nothing else with your day, if you can spend your mornings creating, not consuming. And
I
I
love
think
that.
that's a really, and it's hard because I want to like check in to see like what Stephen Colbert said the
I
night
know,
before or
exactly,
whatever.
yeah.
But if you can allow yourself like 10 minutes to, and even if not create, but like sit with your own thoughts,
Hmm.
that's something, that's a goal. So that's something I'm gonna try to. I've I go through times where I can do that, and I do that. And heading to New Mexico, like that always just sort of chinks things back into place where I'm much more centered in my art practice and writing practice and everything. So I'm looking
Hmm.
forward to that.
Yeah,
It's
and actually, continuing on with my news, yeah, then I'm going to, we're having a family reunion. We're celebrating my
mhm.
aunt's 95th birthday.
And
And
where are
then
they?
in New York, upstate New York, in Ithaca, we'll be
Nice.
in the Ithaca area. And then in Chicago in July, I'm going to be teaching another gouache workshop and then going to the Urban Sketchers Symposium in Toulouse in July. And then, of course, in August, we have our which actually it's a good time to mention it. In August, we have our Ohio Urban Sketchers Summit, which is going
Yeah,
to be
what
in
weekend
Cleveland
is
this
that?
year. I believe it's whatever that Friday is. I want to say it's the 7th to the 9th, but don't quote me. It's whatever that first
Say
weekend
that again
is.
because you cut out for a second.
Oh, it's the 7th to the 9th, I believe, in
Okay.
August.
Okay.
And whatever that weekend is, it starts a Friday and ends on a Sunday, but
Hmm.
registration starts this Saturday at 9 a.m. on the 16th.
Oh,
So if
great.
there's workshops that you want to get, and we've got a great lineup of instructors this year. And I think people will really enjoy the keynote by Jenny Zhang. And, I think it's going to be really fun.
Hmm.
And then, of course, I have my Morocco trip, which I have just a couple spaces left if anyone wants to join in September.
Nice.
And we have a great group going for that. And then, further afield, and I think when are you have Ireland happening in August, right?
Well, I normally would, but with all of the stuff that was going on this spring, I canceled
You
that.
need a break, yeah.
I did a break. Also not, I usually go away for music camp in midsummer, and I'm not doing that. I'm just going north. I'm just going to head up north and be with
Oh, to
family.
Vermont. Oh, that'll be nice.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the summer kind of off after Taos, and I'm just gonna like shut everything down until September and just really take a breather.
That's really smart. Yeah, to take some
Yeah,
time for
yeah.
yourself.
So,
I
but
mean, I might.
we do have dates set for 2027 for all three classes, Guatemala, Taos, and Ireland. So all three will be going next year, and registrations are open. I've already got a few people for Guatemala in the winter.
Oh,
So
awesome. Yeah, and I've got Sicily in May, and it's going to be a really great tour around. It's like 10 days, and we're going to look at, of course, there's the volcano, but Syracuse is one of the most beautiful places I think I've ever sketched, and
mhm.
Ortigia, and it's just really beautiful with all the lemon trees, and
Oh,
it's
that sounds
sort of a
great.
sketcher's paradise. So a lot of people are really interested in that one. So I think it's going to sell out. It's a
Great.
really fun. Um, I think it's a really fun trip.
Yeah, I
Um,
had a good crew in Guatemala this year. I had 2
it
weeks
sounds
sold
like it.
out.
Yeah, that's
It was
awesome.
great. And then next year we've added for anyone who wants to come on the second week and then stay for an extended trip, we are taking a group up to the lake
Oh,
um, for
nice, nice.
like 3 nights, 4 full days, plus like then an extra night back in Antigua before you go to Guatemala. So um,
That's really cool. I mean, I
yeah,
because a lot of
people have
times once you're
asked
already
about
there, yeah,
yeah, people have asked about doing the lake part of it, but it's a stretch to get up there. It's
do you
like
have to
a
fly or do you have to take a?
no, you take a shuttle, which we would do a private, private shuttle. But it was like picking what village do you stay in and how expensive is it and blah blah blah. So we have found a nice place. It isn't super cheap, but it's no more expensive than like a regular hotel here. So it just feels expensive comparatively. um, but we're glad to do it. But we plan on pretty much offering that up to anyone who's come on the trip before or anyone who comes for the second week of Antigua and then wants to stay. Because I just don't think it's reasonable to come in and like hit the ground running and then go up to the lake. Like some people do it, it's great, but the lake it can be a little difficult in its own kind of way. It's
Hmm.
beautiful and it's a lot. As the best places are.
Uh-huh. Oh,
So,
definitely, definitely. I mean, we're because this is my first trip to Morocco in September, so I'm getting
yeah.
there a couple days early to explore Marrakesh, And then at the end, I'm going to Fez for a couple days because I really
Mm.
wanted to check. That's kind of where I had originally wanted to have the workshop. But
Yeah,
since it's my first trip, they suggested doing it in the Asaria area, which I'm really looking forward to that.
great.
But I wanted to see Fez because it's such a big, bustling city. It's really old.
Yeah.
And it looks like there's a lot of not only neat stuff to sketch, but like culture and food. And I'm just fascinated by, I love it when you try to mix the old and new, and
Well,
there's
and
something about
nobody
that.
does that like the old world over there. Like they
Yes.
really have a way of just keeping what's old, but also factoring in the modern. That's one of the things I love about Antigua is it's been
Mm-hmm.
going since, the Mayan times, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just neat to see like the modern day mixed in with such
Mm-hmm.
ancient stuff. So,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's something just, I mean, I love, looking at historical sites. There's a lot of wonderful, and actually, Antigua is also one of those UNESCO historical
yep,
sites. And I think they're
yep.
so important because I think it's important to preserve this stuff and learn more about it. And
Hmm.
because it's so, talking about keeping a journal, also with history too, it's so hard. There's so much you lose so fast.
Yeah,
And, that's something to think about when writing down. I mean, it may seem trivial to you, but think about just how things change so fast. Um, like when I've had some illustration assignments where had to do biographies, like when I did the book on Annie Jump Cannon.
hmm,
When you're trying to find reference for stuff, the thing that's so surprising is how hard it is to find things that we don't use anymore because they get thrown
yeah,
away.
yeah,
But there have been actually ways that people did things that were much more efficient, but they got usurped later by a new technology, and we don't use
hmm,
that anymore. And what we have that's replaced it is not necessarily better. And so that's
right.
always the interesting thing. Like if you look at recipes from the 1800s, they're based on cooking on a wood fire, which gets much more hot than an oven does.
Yeah. Or
And
even like back in the day when people would keep chickens and they would get all the eggs kind of during the nicer season, and then chickens sort of take
yes,
a break in the winter. And we don't think about that because we go and pick up a dozen eggs at the store. But there were ways of preserving fresh eggs in like, was it lime or something?
oh,
There's like
interesting,
way,
yeah.
yeah, there's like a way to put them in like a jar with lime, and they stay fresh, and that's how people always had eggs for baking and cooking, eating
Well,
them as
and
chickens
pickling
were.
anything was a way to preserve vegetables in the winter. And
Exactly,
a lot of
exactly.
these practices, and perhaps that stuff will go back to is, if things get certain things get scarce. I mean, right now everything's based on cheap gas and stuff getting to you
I
from
know.
everywhere, and
I
that
know.
might
How do you
change.
feel like that might affect your travel stuff? I've been thinking a lot
Um,
about
I
that.
I think that it could affect it a lot. I mean, I hate to even predict because I don't know. Um,
Yeah, me
but
neither.
you
I
know, it's
figure the way I'm looking at it is, um, the air tickets are likely to be more expensive. They already are this summer. I
mhm,
know I'm paying a lot more, but um, we just gotta kind of keep the faith and keep going and not borrow trouble, like
mhm,
I would rather plan trips and plan for things going well and meeting the amazing new people that I get to meet on my trips, and those are the people that I want to focus on. I don't really want to focus too much on the news. I keep, one ear to it, obviously, for safety reasons and
mhm,
stuff, but in the end, life kind of has a way of going on, and if you're able to keep making travel happen and keep going to these places, it does help the world. To
mhm.
like if all travel ceased, so many businesses would go out of business.
I feel like, even if you can't, I mean, traveling doesn't mean traveling abroad. I think just getting out
No.
of where you are,
Hmm.
even if you go to, say, Michigan, or go to Pennsylvania or West Virginia and experience areas just outside. I mean, I think that you find out that people are more the same than different. And I think
Hmm.
that there is a push lately to kind of push people apart and not realize that we're more similar than different.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a big force right now that we're all dealing with, is that there are people that are actively trying to divide everyone. And,
Hmm.
I think that that's really unfortunate. And, I think it's always in the back of your mind that you might have to pivot and change plans. I mean, but the year COVID happened, we had to change a bunch of stuff. I
Hmm.
mean, like I said, life is what happens when you're making plans. And so, yes, we might end up in a situation where we pivot, but I mean, I don't really know what to think, because every day, I feel like right now, and I don't know if it was similar in other times of tension, but I feel like right now, and that's one thing I think that's bad about sort of the internet and stuff, is that you have a fire hose of information. And I don't think that I think that there have been other times when everything bad was happening, but you didn't necessarily get bombarded with it. And I think that that
Right.
mentally makes it difficult for a lot of people because, I mean, obviously it's really scary and you're like, what's going to happen? And, and one thing that about culture in general is when something bad happens, people pay more attention to that than,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, talking about surgery, for example, 10 years ago, because it was 11 years ago, I was going deaf, as you remember. And in 2015, I got ear surgery. I had otosclerosis, which is your stapes bone um, is calcified and doesn't move anymore, so you can't hear. And there's a surgical procedure for it where they replace those little bones with a titanium piston. And so I've had normal hearing since I had it done in both ears in 2015, but I had a hearing aid before then. And I remember it was very hard to hear. And so there's a couple groups on Facebook where people that are getting the surgery will say, because anything you read about the surgery, a lot of times it's people that had a bad thing happen. Because if something goes right on a procedure, you're like, yay, and you go on with your life. But if something bad happens with it, then you're like, oh my god, I became deaf because of this, because the procedure didn't work. And so whenever somebody asks about it, I say, I my surgery, I talk about my good experience, because people tend
Hmm.
not to talk about that. And that's perhaps why we're bombarded constantly by anything we do now. They're like, can you rate this?
Yeah.
And perhaps it's because when people are angry is when they tend to rate something, not when they're happy.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so,
That's a
and that
good
makes it
point.
really difficult because you want people to talk about the good experience, but usually if someone has a good experience, they don't necessarily feel motivated to um
Yeah. I try
tell the
to.
world about it. Yeah, yeah, I try
Yeah.
to too. If I like something, I try to give good reviews about it or whatever.
Hmm.
Like I said, there's a tyranny of that, because like everything that you do today, they're like, how did you like this, or how did you feel about this, or
Hmm.
and sometimes it's before you even use the service that they're asking. And it's like, well, call me in 10 years and I'll let you know let you know if I was happy with this or not, because
Exactly.
I mean, we're going through the appliance thing right now, because I think I talked to you that our
Did you
stove
get your
top,
new stove?
well, it's a bit of journey. So maybe like early April, we have had a gas range that we had installed maybe in the 90s sometime. So it's like quite old, probably the late 90s. And it just stopped working. And the guy came to fix it. And he said, well, the parts for this to fix it, they stopped making in 2024. And so we decided we've always wanted to get an induction cooktop. So we went to the store and bought one. And when they installed it, it didn't work. And so, and first, I must preface it with, they tried to install it, and then we had to get a handyman to make the hole in our counter bigger. So you have this whole journey where you have to. It's like everything is like
If you give
a
a mouse a
Pandora's box.
cookie,
Yeah,
if
exactly,
remember
exactly.
those books, like, or
Yes,
if you give a
yes,
pig a pancake.
yeah. It's sort of like it. So we had it installed by a handyman, and it didn't work, and then we had to get somebody from the manufacturer to come out, and they said, yes, the electrical is fine, but this unit doesn't work, and we can order parts so you can get a new one. And so we went back to the store and we're getting a new one, but of course it's not available till June. So
Oh
we
no.
we bought a
So you're
little
still
tiny we bought a little tiny burner from Amazon to cook on
oh,
until we get our cooktop. So I mean,
oh
like I said,
gosh.
like things are not always clean. It's sort
Yeah.
of like anytime you do anything with your house, you're like, this should be easy, but here we are
Yeah.
a month later and we don't have
Yeah.
a
Well,
cookbook.
I also think, like, it's nice to be able to, like, I remember you mentioning your stove, and you were like, "Oh, but that's nothing compared to what you guys are going through," or blah, 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 and I was like, "Actually, it's really nice now and again to kind of share these, like, little inconveniences that could, on a bad day, really bring you down," you know? And it's like, I think it's just important to kinda reach out to your friends and, scream into
Yeah.
the proverbial void now and again, like, we don't have
Mhm.
to do this crazy, messy life on our own. We can
Mhm.
we can do it, with the help of the creative arts and with the help of friends, and we
Mhm.
this week, we did lose a friend,
Mhm.
of our local art community, and that's been a real I've been thinking a lot about that, like, how we fence ourselves off from the world when we're feeling low and feeling rough, and that's, like, the last time that we should be doing that. We should, you know the time when we need help the most is often the time when it's hardest to
Reach
ask
out.
for
Yeah,
it.
I think for
Mhm.
so many people it's really hard to reach out when they're dealing with issues and
Mhm.
um you know I think that that is a time to reach out. And I think
Yeah.
that and there are resources, but I think really community is the best way to reach out and talk to each other about things. And I think it's hard because I think a lot of times societally it's discouraged.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're struggling, people don't seem to want you to. There's sort of this strange, and I don't know where this has come from, this idea that if you're having any types of issues, that somehow it's your fault, or that it's,
Yeah.
and a lot of times you're, like you talked about things being uncontrollable. I mean, things just happen.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're very hard to deal with. Sometimes things don't make sense, and that's when you come together as a community and try to help other people. But you know it feels like it's gone beyond um checking on your neighbor every day. Like some
Yeah.
neighborhoods are really strong, but some people, they don't necessarily check in on their neighbors every day or their friends every day. We tend to get, I mean, have been so busy for most of this year. I feel like I haven't been engaged as much socially as I would like to, just
Yeah.
because, you have all this stuff that you have to get done. And then that puts off a vibe that you don't want to be bothered.
Right.
And yet there's people that really that need to be heard. I think we've talked
Yeah.
about that before. You need to be seen and you need to be heard. And I think
Mhm.
sometimes that means you need to respond to that and say, maybe they don't want you to actively help them, but say, let's go get a coffee, or do you want to, get lunch, or do you want to do, I mean,
Yeah.
because I think it's just been one of those years where it's just been sort of one rough thing, whether it's a, somebody passing away or somebody getting hurt or sick. I mean, there's been a lot going on.
Not to mention just the maelstrom
Yeah.
of news, which
Yeah, it's sort of like
it's just been a wild year.
it's sort of
Um,
like been a dark cloud,
a little
if
bit.
that's the right word.
Yeah.
Or so, like, maelstrom is actually a better word. I think that you said that
Yeah.
earlier. I think that
Yeah,
that's a better
maelstrom. It
description.
just feels like,
Yeah, it's
all
like
this.
there's this
But it's
screaming.
this, yeah, but it's the stuff, like, to kind of double back around, like, it's the stuff that grounds us that is gonna get us through. So
Mhm.
it's making art, calling a friend, having a coffee,
Mhm.
or even, like, I've taken to going to the Y for time at the gym,
Yeah,
and
sometimes something
I'm
physical helps.
something physical, and I'm really enjoying, I didn't think I would make friends at the gym because I'm not like a gym person, but it's a great bunch of people, and I'm really enjoying feeling like, they know my name and they wonder if I'm going to be there on a day, which is nice. It's
And maybe
so
that's a thing. Like, don't be afraid to do something because you feel like you're not going to vibe with the people there.
right. Or if you
Um,
feel like I'm not a gym rat, so I go in there and I'm trying to keep up, doing moves and whatever, and I know I look like a jackass, but it just it's fun and I'm doing my best and, you know, whatever. So
Mhm. What is something that you would recommend that has helped you through, like, the past couple months?
the past couple months, so we had a few people pulled together, got us a meal train, and
Mhm,
there's this thing online called mealtrain.com, and it's
mhm,
really great. It's just like a little website, and you can put someone's needs and information in. And I found it when it first came together, I found it really uncomfortable. Like people
mhm,
were signing up and people were donating, people from away were donating money to like give us DoorDash or whatever. And we were like, we're fine. We don't, we've got all the food. We're fine. And my daughter very wisely said to me, Mom, we get the help we think we deserve. And I had to sit with that for a minute because I guess somewhere deep down there was this part of me that was like, I don't want to bother anybody. We don't really need it. And in the long run, whether we needed it or not, we did need it on some level. And what was great was, once a week somebody would pop over with a fully cooked meal, and it was wonderful. And I, sat down and wrote a bunch of thank you notes and everything, but it just more than anything made us feel like we weren't completely alone.
mhm,
And I think that, our society is very much like, especially in this country, very much like pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do it on your own and don't be vulnerable. And, you
mhm,
know, and that's just not healthy. And as we get older, we're gonna need each other even more. And I just was really I was really just buoyed by the the community of people that just came out and were like, "Here's some food." Because people, and here's the thing: I know that when someone I know is going through a rough patch, like I want to make something, the pot of soup, or bring over some cards or whatever.
mhm,
Like
mhm,
we want to help, and it helps. It helping each other is a way of connecting, and so I think that was the thing that like I really had to sit with.
mhm.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
very
that's,
grateful.
I mean, accepting help is sometimes harder than giving help, I think,
Absolutely.
and I think that there should be more of a practice of that too,
Well,
and
especially like in our area of the world, we're kind of on the edge of Appalachia, and it's very much a hillbilly thing to like
mhm,
do it yourself and don't rely on anyone else. And there's really something to that. And I think that that's not healthy, and we need to try
mm-mm,
to just, like, when you're feeling down, pick up the phone and find someone to chat with. And if that person doesn't pick up the phone or is busy or whatever, keep trying, or at the very least, like, sit down with a notebook and write it all down and wait for another day, because the world is rough right now, and sometimes it's rougher than others, and sometimes you have
mhm,
good times. And also, like, not to harp on the digital thing, but like Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff, outside of Facebook being kind of a place where people yell a lot about things, it's also very much like, look at me, here's my great life. And that's very curated. Everybody's life is messy.
mhm.
Everybody's got
Yeah,
piles of laundry. Like everybody's got, at least in our generation right now, there's aging parents, there's,
mhm,
kids with their own lives, getting stuff going. And I think it's important to remember that life is messy and the world is messy, and that we can still, in that mess, we can still find ways to laugh and find ways to make music together and find ways to draw and learn new things. Like learning a new thing, like I'm trying to learn the Irish language, and I'm
that's really
making just
cool.
bits of progress where I hear words that are familiar, and I can, given a little time, I can put together some sentences, and I've got a little study group that we're working together. But it's it's doing good things for my brain. Like just learning a new thing, like a language,
Mhm.
is doing
And that's
well for
also
my
a
brain.
creative outlet.
It's a
I
very
mean,
creative
that's,
outlet, because they
and
say,
I
like, when you learn a language, you think differently in different languages. And I have found that to be true. Like when I'm thinking more in Spanish, and I'm not great at Spanish, but when I'm surrounded by Spanish and trying to speak more of it and whatever, I feel like a different person in a way.
Interesting.
And I think that the same is going to be for Irish as well, because there's a way of each language and the way it's expressed. There's it a bit of the culture comes through that expression, and I'm intrigued by that. I think if I had it to do over again, I would have been a linguist, because I'm fascinated by how languages affect our perception of the world, even. So,
And stuff like that is kind of changing as they starting
mhm.
to. I was just reading an article yesterday about how AI is going to make translators obsolete, and they were talking about how translation, like you said, like the way things are worded or the way
Yeah,
they're
that is
perceived
so
in other
not
language.
true. That's so not true, at least
hmm
from the AI that I've seen thus
hmm
far.
Well, there's a lot of subtle nuances and
There's subtle
different
nuances,
concepts. Yeah.
and also like different, like there's places in Mississippi that would not
Yes.
understand what someone in Maine was saying and vice versa. And the same as in Ireland. There's different dialects. And my teacher that I work with on the Irish, she'll say, "I love when you have mistakes in your homework because I can tell that you have not used Google Translate." She's like, "'Cause
That's a
you're in there making your own mistakes." And I'm like, "Well, how else am I supposed to learn?" She's like, "Yeah, but not everybody knows that." Like, a lot of people are like, "Oh, I'll just go to Google Translate and I'll put it in my homework." And she's like, "That's not how you learn."
what's the point?
Now,
I mean, that's one
yeah,
thing that I was reading
don't get
about,
me
like,
wrong, I use Google Translate when I
but
need to,
what I'm
especially
saying
on the
is
ball, but
if you're in college, for example, or if you're trying to seriously learn something, what is
mhm,
the motivation? Like they said, a lot of high school students for writing are using, AI and stuff. And
mhm.
to me, it's the thing that's sad about it is why don't you want to learn to do this in the first place? And
Well,
perhaps
that
that's the
gets back
question
to
we
the
need to.
concept of friction. I heard a really good
Yes.
interview with, do you know who Cal Newport is?
No.
He wrote a book. Well, he's written a number of books, but the one he was kind of most known for is called Deep Work, and it's all about like shutting out the stuff in the digital realm that's keeping us from like really focusing.
Mm-hmm.
And he was interviewed on Pod Save America, and it was really good. And he was talking about the concept of friction, like reading and writing. There are things that it does in our brain for our thinking that
Which
like
is just what we've
AI,
been talking about. Yeah.
yeah, that AI can't do. And that our brains need to read and need to write in order to take in the world and process it in a way. So there's a reason people are going a bit nuts, you know, because
Yeah,
they're
I
not.
think that's.
Yeah, so it might not like self-reflection doesn't have to look like sitting and staring at the flowers. Like, honestly, just writing a paragraph about your day can
Mhm.
become a real.
Just say,
I
"I
mean,
went
there's
to the grocery today," or I.
yeah, and there's a whole like, well, and I'm doing that in Irish, so it's very simple. Like, today is a
Oh,
sunny
nice.
day, like that kind of thing.
I
But
love that.
but it's also like, oh, I had a thought and it went away. Um, anyway, it's about processing things. And I think that if we can write more, we're going to be better able to handle and read more and draw more and make more. We're going to be better able to handle the tricky times, which
And
I think we're in.
yeah, and on that note, thanks for listening today. If you have ideas for the show, let us know. But thanks for
Yeah, this
listening.
today wasn't really, we didn't have a plan, and we just were like, we haven't done this in a while and we've missed each other, and it's been a rough ride, and we have to gently kind of ease my way back into all this. So
Yes, but hopefully next month, sometime in June, we'll
yeah,
publish the
maybe
date here.
I could even do we'll talk about dates and stuff, but I could maybe do something from New Mexico, because I have a week
Oh,
between,
fun.
like, where I'll just be there but not quite teaching yet. So
Yeah, so we might have a special remote
yeah,
um
that would be fun. And
discussion.
pardon me with my tissues. My
No
allergies
worries.
are really bad. I'm going to the allergist on Thursday, and for 5 days before you go to the allergist to get your tests, you're not allowed any of your antihistamines.
You
So
must atone.
no, you have to get to your like horribly allergic baseline. So I'm gonna walk in
Yes.
looking wrecked, but it's all for the good in the long run. So
Well, hopefully we'll talk to you all next month, and thanks for joining
yes,
us.
yes. Bye.
Bye.